So in just a few minutes, we're going to start the workshop portion of our meeting from 7 until 7:30, at which point we will begin our regular agenda. And tonight, for workshop, we're going to talk about, have a pre-review of a local law, currently with the City Council, still in progress, regarding modifications to R15 zoning.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to give a little bit of general background. The council, as you guys know, I think there's been a number of items that have come before you that the council is considering ways to allow for additional housing and specifically affordable housing within the city of Beacon. So one of the aspects they started talking about recently was looking at potential, the T district took over where the parking overlay district was, right? So it's this kind of half a block buffer that surrounds the CMS district. So the council actually originally started looking at that and whether there was potential to expand that T district to a larger area to create kind of a bigger transition landing way, I think, between the Central Main Street district and the residential neighbors.
T district.
The transitional district, zoning district. So in this map that I'm showing here, this is kind of where the analysis started. The T district, the transitional district, is the parcels outlined in black this is a land use map. So we wanted to look at what are the land uses within these districts when we're thinking about adding new uses or taking them away. So originally started looking at the black outlined parcels, which are in the T district, and looking at the R15 that is on either side of that to see whether it made sense to expand the T district. And the differences between the R15 and the T, they both permit single family housing. But the T has additional residential uses. So it permits single family attached, it permits two family, and then it permits multifamily with kind of density restrictions on it based on the size of the lot, and then a small smattering of commercial uses. So that's where the council started, and we started looking at this map. And so what this land use map kind of told us as we were discussing it is there is existing, I'll go down to the real quick so you can see. One family is the really light yellow, and then 2 and 3 family and townhomes are in this brighter yellow, and then multifamily is orange. So when we started looking at the R15s on either side, you can already see that there is kind of a mix of land uses. Let me zoom in differently. A mix of land uses within those R15. There's existing 2 families, there's existing 3 families, as well as some multifamily throughout. Where the conversation went, and then where we're talking about now with the council, is what they felt most comfortable with is kind of smaller steps. So their idea was there's a number of existing 2 families that we would like to make we'd like to make them conforming. Right now they're not conforming. If something was to happen, they were to be damaged more than 50%, they could not come back to what they are. They'd have to revert back to single family. So that was kind of what one of the main goals that was talked about with the council is how do we allow those existing uses to stay and become legalized. And then the conversation was about what uses do we want to add, and where the council went with that is right now they're most comfortable with 2 family. Allowing 2 family. So that's how the conversation switched from an expansion of the T district to now looking at the R15 districts and deciding, looking at the R15 districts and saying, can we just add 2 family as a permitted use within those districts? So that's why you're seeing these kind of just outside of that outlined in this maroon color are the R15s. There's 4 R15 districts in the city of Beacon. There's this one kind of north of Main Street, goes up to Wilkes and kind of follows out Fishkill, south of the Main Street area, east of the creek, and then there's this very small R15 up off of Fishkill Avenue. So now that we switched to kind of considering the addition of, just looking at the addition of 2 family, the council made the decision that looked most appropriate in these 2 R15s that are immediately adjacent to the CMS. If you can see the one over on Mead, there's maybe 1 or 2 existing 2 families over there, but the character of that is predominantly single family. Right now, there's not an existing kind of mix of uses there.
So those would remain existing non-conforming, and then always stay R15?
Yes.
Those particular ones?
Yes, so right now, so then the council at the last meeting discussed now kind of two prongs of this. So to your exact question, they said, okay, so maybe we only want to permit new two families to be constructed within certain areas of the R15s. But they do have a desire to legalize maybe the non-conforming uses that are there, so that if, say, an existing two-family or three-family was to be partially destroyed, that it could build back as that, as long as they do it within a certain time frame. So right now, that is where the local law is going, and they expect to we had a draft in front of them at the last meeting last night with some modifications. I'll just say we did look at two aspects. We did look at using a buffer, so doing, a distance from Main Street. So from the center line of Main Street, if you said, okay, only R15 parcels that are within 1,000 feet of Main Street, those is where new two families would be permitted. Ultimately, it was decided that was going to be a little bit trickier. So what they ended up proposing instead was we're going to use streets and do street boundaries. And I'd have to pull up the official map for that, but essentially it's all of this R15 up to Verplank, and Verplank is the northern line now.
That's deep.
Yeah, so if we go back to, I think they were kind of...
Because the T only runs to... So actually, just so I understand this a little bit better.
Yeah.
This isn't creating a new zoning?
Nope. It's working within the existing zoning districts. So we're no longer expanding the T district. The T district is going to stay just those black parcels.
Right, so the T district stays the T district, and that's only about 2
That
blocks deep.
It's
right?
like a half block.
Half block.
A half block on either side of Main Street. So maybe in the future, that might be another step, but like I said, they kind of wanted, the council's looking at doing incremental small steps to kind of add housing.
Yeah. So this then alters R15.
This would be, and the only alteration to the R15 is in the use table, the schedule of use table. You would now have a P next to two family with an asterisk next to it, and there's a qualification that it's only within the R15, south of Verplank, north of Roundabout, west of Teller.
Got it. So it allows within that particular, only that R15 district, two family on any parcel that's an R15.
Within those boundaries.
Within those boundaries.
Yes.
Okay.
But then they're also adding, they asked Corporation Counsel or the attorney to look at a provision that allows for existing two-family, three-family, and multifamily in all R1 districts to have a 12-month period where if there is a destruction of that building for more than 50%, they have 12 months to reestablish that use. So allow the existing non-conforming to be rebuilt if it was damaged, and within this smaller area, allow new two families.
Okay. So quickly then as well, I agree, I think the street boundaries is more crisp.
Yeah.
However, like for example, up to Verplank, down to Roundabout, which side of both of those streets?
So that was the discussion at last night's council meeting. So Verplank, they're thinking it'll just be south of Verplank. So it would just be, I don't know if you can see my pointer. So just the part, and again, that's where that R15 boundary is anyways, for most of Verplank, right? On the other side of Verplank is a different zoning district. But when you get over to Eliza in that area, the properties on the other side of Verplank, north of Verplank, are not allowed to build new two families. They're outside.
Right, okay.
And then, but Roundabout, there was a conversation that the council decided on that property, on that line, it did make sense for properties fronting on Roundabout. So if you're front, so on both sides of Roundabout.
On both sides of the street.
Yeah. So now we're just trying to draft that language to make that very clear in the code.
And that's approved to move it forward? Or
Well-
Nope, it's under conversation. So right now we're, again, in the very initial phases. So they saw a first draft of the language, which is what they saw last night was an amendment to the use table, right, permitting two family. And then we started talking about adding this additional language about where that boundary is drawn in terms of that. So It'll be formally circulated to the planning board once they kind of get a version that they're comfortable circulating to the county for comment and the planning board and setting a public hearing. But we thought it was a good idea to bring it in front of the planning board now at its initial kind of concept phases, fill you guys in on the background conversation that has been going on with this,
Yeah.
so that you're not just seeing it next month.
The subdivision on
Mike?
Catherine and Rombout, the subdivision on Catherine and Rombout that we're talking about, could, if this passes, turn into 2 multifamily lots?
Two
Homes?
two-family.
2 two-family or multifamily?
Is it
Two
multi?
two-family.
Yeah, two
Two
two-family.
two-family.
Two-family
Two-
only.
yeah,
Well,
two-family.
same thing, multi.
Well, the code defines multifamily different than
Yeah, I
two-family,
understand.
so.
But
um,
it's not more than 2,
Not more than 2, correct.
right?
Are there any size constraints with a two-family? Like, does it need to be a minimum size?
Yeah, so there would still be, let me.
That was a good, that was going to be my next question. I give you that look because I live on Rombout.
Okay. Let me pull up
abstain.
there is a bulk regs, so let me look at that, pull this up quick.
Like, how would you distinguish between an ADU and a
So
two-family?
the R15 requires 5,000 square feet per unit, right?
Per unit.
Per unit. So
Right.
you have a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet. To build in the R15, you have to have a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet. And then you also have to have 5,000 square feet for each unit. So if you were doing 2 units, if you were doing a two-family in the R15, if this proceeds, you would need a 10,000 square foot lot or a variance to do that. So
Got it.
that's a good point.
Okay.
I mean, if you guys want to make a recommendation for that.
So that's interesting because if you just think about it, it's technically impossible.
Yes.
On the majority of lots, specifically on Rombout, to do that without some form of variance.
Without some form of variance or.
Just given the size, I mean, I know
Or
the size of
buying two
all of
lots.
those
I
lots.
think we
they're
did
all-
have an analysis from the county about,
I mean, what about
the
the,
distribution of lot sizes. So let's see, in the R15, there's 214 parcels over 10,000 square feet. So those could do,
Within that catchment area, you just,
within all R15.
Oh, within all R15.
R15
Okay.
districts, yeah. So that, if you can see this table, this is kind of the breakdown. So there are a number of lots that are under 5,000 square feet, where right now they probably are non-complying, right? If they
Yeah, I
even have one
understand.
unit there, because they're less than 5,000 square feet. And then there's the majority, 56% of the properties in the R15 are between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet.
I mean, I think.
It's a good point to have them consider, though, if they do want to actually facilitate.
right. that's
Right,
what I'm-
families
Those are
being-
two
that's what I'm
very,
saying.
that's not affordable, like, that, we're not adding affordable housing, we're just adding more housing.
exactly.
And, you
Really
know,
good
I mean,
point.
the existing type of two-family house that you see oftentimes in town is like a slightly larger than normal, perhaps, with like an upstairs and a downstairs unit. And
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
is that would that be allowable?
Yeah, you would still be able to do it. You would have to have a larger size lot, though, I think. So what we're talking about here is that could preclude that from happening, because where you see that, maybe that is a 6,000 square foot lot that has what looks like a single-family home, but it's, 2 flats above each other. So if the council does not amend this minimum square footage per unit, that's going to be hard to do.
Is there a dwelling square footage requirement?
Yeah.
If the
Per-
lot has to be, what's the dwelling per?
That's based on on building code, New York
Gotcha,
State
okay.
building code, in terms of like what the minimum size of units are.
Gotcha.
The code only regulates that for, I think right now, currently, the Beacon City Code only regulates that for the below market rate units. There's certain minimum square footage requirements.
Okay.
As well as, I think the other aspect is, so you could have the little bit of a difference here, because you guys recently saw before you was the ADU regulations, right? And so R15 could also have 2 units. They could have a primary unit and an accessory dwelling unit. But this change in the code would not require homeownership, whereas ADU requires one of the units to be the property owner.
Uh-oh. That's a slippery slope.
Sorry,
Non-home ownership.
renters?
Yeah.
Yeah, the council discussed that. I mean, I think they have no opposition to renters.
They don't remember the period of time when there was quite a lack of or quite a preponderance of absentee landlords
Yeah.
and little maintenance and bad conditions. I mean, I remember this was a while ago. but-
Yeah. I mean, I think that conversation comes up a lot in terms of when you're talking about housing communities and people's conceptions about homeowners versus renters and absentee landlords, so.
I'm not talking about perception, I'm talking about the practical realities, things that I know the city suffered from and
Yeah.
had to deal with. Again, it was quite some time ago, and it is a different time, but I'm sure they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just back to this whole concept of minimum lot size,
Mm-hmm.
and just as a theoretical exercise, what is the point if it's just physically impossible for
I
a
think this is a
significant
good question that
majority?
they could focus on. And I
Yeah.
mean, so what they did in the T district, right? Because T district, I think to facilitate having multiple units on properties, they did, what you can see here is the I, right? Where the minimum per unit requirement is half of whatever the adjacent one is. So T district is largely adjacent to R15. So in that district, this per unit square footage has been reduced to 2,500 per unit rather than 5,000, which then makes it much more feasible to be able to actually build a two-family on
Yeah.
half of the lots
Has
in the
anyone,
district.
has anyone on the council questioned whether allowing more density really has any, what the chances of actually creating affordable housing? We approved 4 townhomes on Henry Street. The asking price on Zillow is $1.2 million per unit.
Yeah, I think the council's had that conversation a
'Cause I mean,
number of times
I
about
keep hearing let's allow ADUs, let's allow multifamily housing. And to me, it's like, I understand, I feel like your heart's in the right place, but
I don't
is there
think the
anything else
conversation
that
has
can
just been affordable housing,
actually-
it's been housing, right? Like, there's a number of studies in
It's not
Dutchess
doing
County
anything for
about
affordable
a
housing.
need for housing, whether
For-
it's market rate or below market rate.
Yeah, I don't know. I just.
Yeah.
You don't agree that there's a need for housing in Dutchess County?
I agree that
There
there's
may
a
be
need
a
for
need.
affordable housing.
Okay.
There may
Big
be a
time.
need for both. I agree that there's definitely a need for affordable, but is this the right mechanism for achieving either or both?
Okay.
And just in terms of the quantity of housing, to some degree, the types of situations that the city would be creating with this type of new zoning change, I don't know if it's the type that the market is looking for. You know what I mean? It's basically rentals, right?
It's not, there's not going to be any mandate that it's going to be rental. If somebody wanted to split their house into 2 unit, right, if they want. you
Two-unit
could-
condo? That's what I mean. It just doesn't seem like it's the sort of caliber or type.
I think there's instances where the property owner of a two-family lives on that lot. That's not like a
No,
unheard of
that's what I
circumstance,
do.
but sorry?
I have an apartment in my house. It's really common to have, just have a
Yeah,
second
no,
floor.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. But again, my point is that that serves a specific type of need. Is the extent of the need just that type, the type we're talking about that would end
No,
up
I
being
think
created
the
here?
council's trying to look at a lot of different ways of increasing housing opportunities in the city, and this seems like this is kind of a smaller, missing middle kind of type, right? That's not necessarily larger buildings on Main Street or infill development in the Linkage District or the CMS. This is another way to allow for more flexibility and opportunity for housing in a smaller sense, right? In many ways, in a sense that can be more contextual with the neighborhood, because many times these two-family units end up looking just like the single-family unit next to them. So rather than having large apartment buildings, this is a way to kind of add soft density.
Yeah, fair.
So I guess comments that I could convey to them is, generally, is this the best way to address the desire to add more housing, to allow more housing in Beacon? And looking at the per unit square footage requirement and whether this would even be feasible to do two-family
I
with
mean, I
this
think just,
requirement, if that's not
again,
amended.
just as an exercise, that's the biggest question. I mean,
Yeah.
if the purpose is to do that,
How many lots?
Could do that.
What
How
does
many
this really
lots
get you?
within the, areas you've identified can actually accommodate?
Yeah.
I would ask the question, should we be doing something to like expand Beacon Housing Authority or, so that we can actually get more truly affordable housing? Something that's way more concrete.
what are the next steps with the city council with this, do you know?
So there is revision to the language regarding the area that's being restricted, right? So
Okay.
that language had to be added to address both sides of Roundabout. Then a draft comes before them again, and if they feel like that's a final draft, then they do the circulation and set a public hearing. So that circulation would be to the county, to the planning board, and then host a public hearing. That would be the time for you guys to give official comments. We could continue on this. And then it goes back before them. After that, they can either continue, they can revise again based on comments.
Yeah. Again, I'm not against at all the attempt to create more housing opportunities. I just worry about the scaling character and this whole concept of what I just described, period of time. And again, it was a different period of time, different economic situations, but that the city went through relative to quite a few absentee landlords, creating a situation where they're back to this, where you've got people not looking after their properties because they're not living there. They have no vested interest in the community, and therefore they're not upkeeping their properties. That's a real concern of mine, especially because this is capturing a part of my property. So I have a personal interest in this as well. And a concern, because I've seen it.
Yeah.
Again, not to say that everything is going to end up badly because of this, but there's that aspect of it that needs to be considered.
Yeah, and there's definitely a role. I think how Beacon came back from that and the time that you're talking about is a bigger focus on enforcement. But that takes capacity and
Takes resources.
resources and manpower.
Attention.
And everything. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
I
Let's
mean,
see.
do you want to consider making the same stipulation for ADUs, that it has to be owner occupied?
I think they did discuss that, but if that's something the board recommends, I can bring that back up. I think they did originally, council did have a discussion about that.
What was the question?
Owner occupied.
Whether there's a stipulation that they need to be owner occupied?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth considering.
Yeah.
Again, not at all in a, objecting to the underlying intent. Just really, there's so many unintended consequences that come about that sometimes, if we really don't think them through carefully, could end up in, situations that we didn't anticipate. So, okay. Thank you very much. Super helpful.